Valve is arguably the greatest team of developers in gaming history. With their humble yet ambitious beginnings with Half-Life 1, some lesser-known titles, while also creating the most consumer-friendly marketplace for video games ever somewhere along the way, their range is quite impressive, and I just played and ranked every single one of their titles. To be eligible for this list, a game had to be developed by Valve themselves, meaning some but not all spin-off games for Half-Life and Counter-Strike that weren't developed by Valve will not be talked about. Per usual, one game gets the S+ ranking and will be deemed the best Valve game of all time, and one the F ranking and be deemed the worst. Keep in mind, this is my list, and you will 100% disagree somewhere along the way, so go ahead and comment your favorite and least favorite Valve game as we get started. Half-Life was a game that was developed for the sole purpose of redefining the first-person shooter genre of gaming entirely. What can often be seen as moving from A to B while killing everything in your path with not much else to it, Half-Life decided to add an entirely new element in the form of puzzle solving and lack of cutscenes. And I want to go ahead and start off by emphasizing those lack of cutscenes. The entirety of this game is told from Gordon Freeman's perspective, and you are never jumped out of that immersion once throughout the game. The closest thing you get to that is when he gets knocked out and captured by the military, and you just kind of teleport from when he got knocked out to when he woke up, which, I mean, what else are you gonna do there? Nowadays, this is unheard of because games spend way too much time making a visual appealing dopamine-filled cutscene and end up lacking in the narrative department. I mean, let's just take GTA 6 for example. This game has so much hype around it, and we still have not seen a drop of actual official gameplay. What about them booty physics though? The story is simple. The Black Mesa facility is undergoing tests that backfire and create a rift between an alien dimension Zen that compromises the facility to which you are just trying to escape. And that's basically the whole game. You are just Gordon Freeman trying to get out of this hellscape, and then you slowly realize that the military is also evil, and then cap this game off with one of the best plot twists that give you this really uncertain, eerie vibe for the rest of humanity, and you have the birth of what many would call the best video game franchise of all time. The gameplay is clever in that it's not a forgiving shooter that just lets you coast through it. I died a lot in this game, way more than I'd ever like to admit. You have very limited ammo, especially towards the beginning of the game, as well as limited health. The enemy AI is very skilled and considerably difficult. You'll get caught in these checkpoints of death where you get this checkpoint where you have like 10 health and you just have to like really cheese your way to the next health pack without getting any type of combat because they will just aimbot your ass. But above all, there are times where you're going to get stuck on what to do, and the only way to figure out how to progress the level is to experiment with ideas, which is what made this game stand out among other FPS games. That's because of this Gold Source engine, which made these puzzles and experimental ideas and critical thinking flow very well. The physics, gunplay, and models made for a great foundation for a solid game, which like the next 6 titles we're about to talk about all ran off this engine as well, so we're just getting started with the Gold Source engine. This engine created something monumental for gaming and what was to come in the future, and is just something no one really saw coming. And with all that, original Half-Life gets an A tier. Of all the old multiplayer games Valve has, surprisingly enough, one of the only ones I couldn't find a game for was Team Fortress Classic. A Half-Life mod, by the way, get used to me saying that for about the next 10 minutes or so, that initially started out as a mod for Quake in 1996, yes, you did hear that correctly, but Valve saw the potential of that game and decided to hire those modders and create an official release on the Gold Source engine instead. The multiplayer shooter with an objective and class-based gameplay that capitalized on the arena shooter craze with its origins of Quake and other games like Doom. Not to mention when it was released, it was made free for anyone who had purchased Half-Life 1, which was a massive bonus. As stated earlier, I wasn't able to find a traditional game for Team Fortress Classic, so it's pretty hard to rank in comparison to other games on this list, because I really just don't have much to go off of. The closest thing I got was a bot server where I was playing like a defend the VIP kind of game mode, so I mean, I really don't have much to say about this game. I wish if I was like 10 years older, I could have a little more input to it. But those of you who actually got to play Team Fortress Classic in its heyday, go ahead and let me know down below. I'm just gonna give it a B tier because the concept sounds really fun, but don't really have much to go off of here. RICOCHET was yet another mod for Half-Life in the Gold Source engine that was cooked up in 3 months. Mainly cooked up as a meme to prove that the Gold Source engine modding tools could create something in such a short time, and to be fair, it kind of proves that point pretty well. It's a multiplayer kind of like King of the Hill game where you throw discs at each other, and I mean, it's pretty clunky if I'm being honest, and it's obviously dead. I had to get some friends to load up the game. We just like populated a server, and it really just is not that fun. Also, this game still is like $5, so that was kind of bullshit too. You get different discs that do different things and have power-ups and all sorts of other stuff. Yeah, this game's pretty bad. I would not play it. It is a D tier. Counter-Strike, the game designed for Adderall abusers and Eastern Europeans. It too was, you guessed it, a mod for Half-Life that pitted teams against each other for a much more tactical experience that rewarded raw aim and game sense, which usually resulted in the better team to win almost every time. It won't come to a surprise that there are a handful of servers that were very much so populated in 2025, so I gotta jump in and have some fun myself. Basically inventing the bomb, defuse, and arming game mode that every FPS game has now adopted since, while creating its unique buy phase before each round to strategize economy and what to buy and not to buy pending each round. I was surprised to see other quality of life aspects that are in the modern installments still in this game, like the whole damage input and output thing. You know, when you die, it would say how much damage you took and how much damage you gave out was pretty impressive, and the fact that they had like an algorithm computing this like in such a fast time in 2004 is very impressive. The game also birthed some of the most legendary maps that have since been in every future version, like Dust, Dust 2, Mirage, and Train. But what I find most fascinating about the original Counter-Strike is that it is loosely the exact same game that it is today. Yes, the graphics are obviously considerably worse, and the Gold Source engine is clunky in comparison if you're not used to it. The same raw foundation of a game is here, and it is basically untouched. I would go as far as argue that Counter-Strike, being released in 2000, is the first example of like a live service game, because it just changes things and doesn't really add much else to it. And that is actually very impressive and definitely not a bad thing for a game that came out in 2000 that still has a big pulse today. I know the original Counter-Strike went through a ton of different phases and versions, including, you know, like before it was even released, like the mod phase and whatnot. I just played the modern version on Steam. I know people praise 1.6, but this is the game that I played and the one I'm talking about for this video. A lot of people consider it to be the best, but I'm giving it a B tier because I think there are some better versions out there. Deathmatch Classic is, shocker, another mod for Half-Life that is its own version of the Quake Deathmatch mode. Which, mind you, the Gold Source engine itself is a mod of the Quake engine, which means Deathmatch Classic is a mod of a game that is built on the engine of the original game that then got its official release on that Gold Source engine. I don't know. I really don't understand why this game needs to exist. This has everything that the Quake Deathmatch mode has to offer, with a couple new bells and whistles, like updated textures, models, and pretty much nothing else to it. I couldn't find a game with this, but I was able to play against fucking Elon Musk in some weird ass bot server. Then I played a couple other versions of it. Yeah, you're probably just better off playing Quake. I don't know why this existed back then. I guess they just wanted to compete with Quake, which is kind of weird because to me it's almost like a biting of the hand that feeds you, considering the Gold Source engine existed because of Quake. Anyways, this game feels very weird to me. I would never go back and play this, especially when Counter-Strike exists. That's definitely a much better multiplayer experience for the time. It gets a D tier. We are officially on the last game that originally started out as a mod for the original Half-Life, and that is Day of Defeat, a World War II shooter that focused on team and objective-based gameplay similar to Team Fortress. This is another tricky one because I was able to find populated games, but it was entirely in Mandarin.
厉害。哟 ，KD 杀9个了，我操，牛逼！
Meaning, one, I couldn't communicate with my teammates, and two, the ping was just horrific. I still had a good time with this game. I played the game that was the Destroy Target, which is basically the bomb diffuser from Counter-Strike. But similar to Deathmatch Classic, I don't think I would play this over Counter-Strike, and I also don't want to spend too much time here because I think the Day of Defeat source that we're about to talk about is a much better experience. Day of Defeat gets a C tier. Of all the multiplayer games we've talked about so far, Day of Defeat Source has to be my favorite. Taking the exact same game we just talked about, but now poured into the Source engine, this was a much better experience for me. One of those reasons is that I actually was able to converse with my teammates in English, and that being said, I was also very surprised to see how active this game was. There's tons of servers with all sorts of game modes, one of which was a team gun game that's clearly a modded mode that is also played on modded maps, which, in case you forgot, this is probably the only time I'm going to say it, but that's kind of Valve's whole jam, is just like user-generated content and just like letting the community do whatever they want, and Day of Defeat Source showcases that very well. The overall gameplay is much more fleshed out and fluid, and there are tons of quality of life elements added to the HUD and menus that'll make it much more user-friendly as well. The main mode that seems to be the most popular was the Conquest mode, which is basically the same Conquest from Battlefield, which, on a side note, this game released like pretty damn close to the release of Battlefield 1942, and I think that's why this game gets totally swept under the rug, because I swear I've like only heard about this game like once or twice in my life, and I think that's part of it. But the game is similar to Call of Duty, but it has that Source engine gunplay with the bloom and recoil patterns, and it's really fun to play. Honestly, this game was fun enough to where I wouldn't mind seeing some type of sequel or reimagining or remaster for a modern title. And I'm just gonna say it, I'm giving Day of Defeat Source an A tier. Counter-Strike Condition Zero was a sequel spin-off to the original Counter-Strike that gets overlooked for a handful of reasons. We can start with the development being an absolute hellscape. With collaborations with Rogue and even Gearbox, it just got turned upside down on itself multiple times. So much so that the game was originally slated for like 2001 or 2002, but didn't come out until 2004, which mind you was only like a couple months away from Counter-Strike's source. As far as the game itself, on the surface it looks like this game is DLC or even modded content for the original Counter-Strike. It focused more on like single player content, which I actually like the idea of. I just don't think it was done well here. The first of which is where you went through pretty much scenarios. It was basically just like playing the game with AIs, but there was like challenges and you could like recruit different AIs on your team for like cost and like upgrades and whatnot. I did like this one more than the deleted scenes, which technically is another game, but I'm just lumping it all together here. Deleted scenes is an actual campaign with a whole story that you play actual missions against, you know, scripted moments, you know, blowing shit up and whatnot. And you think first-person shooter story mode with the cold source engine, you think it would have like a Half-Life vibe to it, and it just doesn't at all. This game's pretty fucking terrible, I'll be honest. Definitely like the worst way to experience Counter-Strike. Take that back, one of the worst ways. I think there's one more on this list that is worse. They should have just really fleshed out the whole challenge mode instead of making this deleted scenes, because it just does not belong on the marketplace whatsoever. Since Counter-Strike is such a sweaty game, you're gonna get shit on by someone named ALYX anyway, so having like the training wheels on in an AI mode is pretty nice, but I think that's in the game already to begin with, so I don't know why this game exists, if I'm being honest. Counter-Strike gameplay, it just does not translate well when it's PvE. I'm not sure how much this game retailed for, but I would feel pretty cheated if I bought this and then just a couple months later Counter-Strike Source came out. Technically, Condition Zero still has like a multiplayer like any other Counter-Strike would, but again, I think you're just better off playing the original or the Source, which is about to come out. Condition Zero gets a D. Half-Life Source was technically the very first game on the Source engine, and I'm going to leave it short and sweet here. This is the worst way to play this game. Don't waste your time. Detail. Counter-Strike Source is what most people consider to be their first experience with the Source engine, and as we stated before, it is just an updated version of Counter-Strike, and I think this is a lot of people's favorite, and I can see why that is. With these old games, I always was holding my breath to see if we'd actually be able to find a game, but I was pretty surprised to find plenty of activity on CS Source. The overwhelming majority of these servers are all party game modes because this game just gave so much tools to the players. This like Among Us imposter clone seemed to be the most popular one of all of them, and this is what I spent most of my time when I played this game for.
Trick on this map. Hold up. You just use the crowbar like. Can you move a little bit to the left?
Oh, sorry.
No, chill.
What the?
What the fuck's going on?
It's
Whoa!
What the where you at? Oh, wait, but listen, don't shoot yet. You can line up people and wall bang through them and it will shoot 3 for 1. Okay, shoot us in a straight line.
Yeah, wait, hold on. Oh, you forgot me, dude.
So we're both green. Oh, kill him, he's a traitor. He wasn't a traitor, he was innocent.
Oh,
He fell off.
What the? Maybe aside from Half-Life, I think so far Counter-Strike Source has had the most mod support and the best like showcasing of giving your community whatever the hell they want to do with your game. And that's why this game is still so popular today. I joined one server in particular and found a niche community that kind of explained the whole reason this game has a pulse. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to the homie. Why do you guys play this version of Counter-Strike instead of Counter-Strike 2?
I used to play Global Offensive a lot, and then 2 came out and it sucked so bad it made me want to try this, and I tried it and I liked it a lot.
People have worked on mods and they don't work in CS2.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So this game is this. If you're playing if you want to play mods and like silly ass bullshit, this is the game you play.
Yeah.
I come here after Warzone, after like CS2, whatever. I come on this shit to just wind down a little bit before I go to sleep, you know? Just troll, man. Spam microphones, call people the N-word.
I was always under the impression that CSGO and CS2 had enough mod support to just like allow these kind of games to exist in that game, but that actually couldn't be further from the truth. Since I already know how Counter-Strike plays, I spent basically my whole entire time with CS Source around with the custom games, and I had an absolute blast. There's so much going on, and people are actually using voice chat and not like using Discord or any other third-party softwares to talk to people, which kind of brings me back to just like early 2005 console gaming. I was also impressed with this game to see small details such as when you're underwater, your voice chat sounds like you're underwater. When a game has more tools than its successors, it results in it having relevancy and incentive to play, which is really cool. There's no paid skins or cosmetics because you can just port in your own and play with quite literally anything you want. And that Counter-Strike gameplay you'd watch while watching a Leafy video in 2013 wouldn't be possible without Counter-Strike Source. Anyways, this is something that probably any Counter-Strike player has already played, but if you haven't, you definitely should. Feels like this is what Gary's mod was before Gary's mod, and it's beautiful to see that it's still going strong today. Counter-Strike Source gets the first S tier on this list. I'm lumping Half-Life 2, Episode 1, Episode 2 all together for this video. I know a lot of people are pretty opinionated that they're very different games, and I don't really understand that. It is a cohesive story and they have their own highs and lows, but this is gonna be one package for the video. Releasing just a few weeks after Counter-Strike Source, Half-Life 2 was the very anticipated sequel of Half-Life, and it delivered on every single facet. Taking place roughly 20 years after the events of the first one, the lore and backstory for the Half-Life universe goes so hard in Half-Life 2. The Combine, the Resistance, the Vorts, there's just a lot of moving parts here. We've already praised the Source engine for how fluid it is in comparison to the Gold Source engine, but Half-Life 2 really showcases what was possible for gaming at the time, especially when you start like around with the gravity gun. This is one of the most iconic guns in gaming history, and the sky is really just the limit with this game, especially in the few instances when it gets upgraded and then you just start doing all this crazy shit with it too. I'm also going to come out and say that I like Half-Life 2 considerably more than Half-Life 1. In Half-Life 1, for the most part, you're confined to Black Mesa, but in Half-Life 2, you have tons of places to explore. City 17, Nova Prospect, the Citadel, and many others. And another aspect about Half-Life 2 is that when you need to go somewhere else, like however far it may be, you're gonna be walking or driving there the whole entire way. There's no fast travel, there's no like blips in any like cutscene, except for I guess when you teleport that one time. Other than that, you are truly going from A to B with no shortcuts along the way. And this is something that many new games don't do. Half-Life 2 does very well. You can really tell these driving sections aren't just an afterthought. The story itself, as stated earlier, really starts to take off, and now there are tons of new characters, most notably ALYX, added to the mix. You're constantly getting new reveals and plot twists of what's to come as you try to take down the Combine. And the gameplay is also just improved in a lot of ways. More guns, more enemy types, and more puzzle solving as well. One stint during Episode 1, you basically don't use any gun aside from the gravity gun, and I really enjoyed that. Then you have 1 to 2 hour driving instances that keep the gameplay feeling fresh throughout this game's entirety. Obviously, this game is much better graphically speaking than Half-Life 1, but once you get to Episode 2 and 1, when you go outside and you really get to see just how beautiful this world is and how the engine just complements this game so well. Anyways, it probably won't come as a surprise that Half-Life 2 is a masterpiece and took everything great about not only Half-Life, but gaming as a whole, and made a state-of-the-art experience that everyone needs to play at least once. With that in mind, Half-Life 2 gets the S+ rating for this video and is deemed the best Valve game of all time. Portal's one of those games I was really hesitant to play when I was a kid because when it came out, it was always labeled as a puzzle game, and at its core, it definitely is that. But as a kid in middle school, that's just something that like, why would I want to play a game that makes me think? But then you play the first level and it tickles your brain in such a way that nothing else on this planet can do. Similar to Half-Life 1, you spend the entirety of the game trying to escape from a mysterious facility, being Aperture, and we already went over how crazy the Source engine was with Half-Life 2 and the gravity gun, but now we have the Portal gun, which showcases how much Valve really thought about when they made this game. You'd be lying if this wasn't the first thing you did when you played this game. Anyways, the game is really clever because it really thought about every single possibility, and this Portal gun just does not seem jank whatsoever. The levels border the perfect line between difficult but not so hard that you're gonna get frustrated, which make full-blown idiots like myself feel gratified with every chamber I beat. The progression is constantly challenging the player to think outside the box as you slowly unfold the mysterious story of Aperture and GLaDOS the deeper you go into the story. Which you can go ahead and talk about how like not deep the game is, not because the story is lacking or anything, but the game is just so short. I think I beat this game in like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, like taking my time, which is gonna leave you wanting more, which wouldn't be bad because, you know, there's a sequel we're gonna talk about here in a second. It does kind of feel a little disappointing in that regard. I think this was Valve kind of dipping their feet in the water with puzzle games, and in turn they gave us a short and sweet and amazing experience. Aside from the length of this game, I have absolutely nothing else to complain about it, and I'm giving it an A tier. Team Fortress 2 was the first true hero shooter for many people. What started out as a mod for Quake later turned into a mod for Half-Life, getting an original title release, has now gotten a sequel on the kick-ass Source engine. With plenty of classes to choose from that bind you to a role for you and your team, there is just something for everyone on this game. It is a very sweaty game, but surprisingly, the skill gap wasn't as bad as I thought it'd be as a returning player. I hadn't touched this game in probably close to a decade now, but there are definitely classes that don't require as much raw aim and games. It's more so about game sense, which is really good. And there's just the right amount of classes to where it's not going to be super overwhelming in that regard, so that's also really nice. I know TF2 has an insane following to this day, but I thought I would at least struggle to find a game, but that was just not the case. However, in just about every game I get into now, I mean, I'm playing in the casual, I don't play competitive or anything, it seems like everyone wants to do quite literally anything except for actually play the game. Everyone's just fucking around, and I find that hilarious. Like I said, I hadn't played TF2 in probably a decade, so I missed out on a ton of updates and features, which, to be fair, I don't really ever think the game was lacking in that department. This was also one of the very first games ever to go free to play and kind of adopt the live service model, and they did it in such a way which was mega consumer friendly, so big props to Valve for that. I think Fortnite definitely took some pages out of the TF2 book because they did it okay as well. The gameplay is extremely varied with several modes to choose from, many of which modern hero shooters don't have, and as per Valve usual, the modding community has all sorts of user-generated content and maps to keep things fresh. And like I said, I think you can jump into it now and not want to hate your life because the learning curve is not near as bad as people would think it is. Anyways, hero shooters are a genre of game that I actually really enjoy. I have thousands of hours in Overwatch, and I wish I was a little more mature when it came out because I probably would have liked this during its peak. I kind of missed out on that. I was too busy playing other dumb shit. This game is single-handedly responsible for the rise and eventual fall of games like Overwatch and Marvel Rivals, and that in itself is an achievement, and TF2 gets an A tier. The Orange Box was a compilation disc that included Half-Life 2, Episode 1, Episode 2, Portal, and Team Fortress 2. I always saw commercials for this when I was little, and I was so blown away that you could put multiple games on one disc. And this is something I wish would happen more often with modern titles, and that's so awesome, it gets an S tier. Left 4 Dead. This was my personal first ever Valve game, and it holds a very special place in my heart, and I'm sure it does for a lot of you too. A mindless co-op shooter with 5 different campaigns to traverse through that somehow take an extremely simple and arguably repetitive gameplay loop and keep it fun and refreshing. Bill, Francis, Zoe, and Lois are your survivors, and the name of the game is just slaughter comedically large amounts of zombies as you go from level to level, and eventually hit the climax of each campaign where you survive until you're rescued. I want to praise Left 4 Dead 1's last level, The Sacrifice, being one of the most difficult levels that's just permanently ingrained in my brain. And even replaying it for this video, I think I tried 6 or 7 times before I finally got it, and I was playing solo, which made things even harder. The rest of the game isn't really too hard, but this level is just it's a true back in the day when last levels actually were hard. This is one of those games. The versus mode was another really fun alternative way to play this game as the survivors, assuming you're playing against people that know what they're doing. With all the different types of zombies out there, you had to change the way you were playing depending on what boss zombie you were up against, which helped the repetitive gameplay feel not so repetitive. And I know the first time you ever encountered a witch, you were fucked up for the rest of your life. Don't want to talk about it too much more because I think the sequel, there's a little more to expand on. I'm giving Left 4 Dead an A tier though. Left 4 Dead 2 released only 1 year after Left 4 Dead, and in that short time, we got a substantial improvement. The graphics are noticeably better, and I think that's due in part that we now have levels that take place in the daytime that give the game a little bit more vibrancy. The arsenal is roughly tripled in size. You can move objects around to rig certain areas around you to explode. There's a new survival mode that made for a ton of replayability. Tons of new zombie types like the jockey and charger. But above everything I just talked about, the introduction of melee weapons is probably the most important thing going on here. I don't know why this was overlooked in the first game because one, Valve and I guess Half-Life and the crowbar is kind of iconic at this point. And 2, I feel like zombies and melee weapons go hand in hand. This gave the game a whole new approach with so many different options to choose from. It was a real pick your poison game more so than it already was. This took place at your secondary, which you could also change your secondary to the Desert Eagle, so the whole loadout and gun selection is just way more thorough than what it was in Left 4 Dead 1. Well, one other crazy piece of information that I must have overlooked as a kid, or maybe it was just retroactively added, is that Left 4 Dead 2 has every single campaign from Left 4 Dead 1 baked into it as well. Again, I don't know if this was like a free update or if I have some DLC or what it is, but that in and of itself makes it better than Left 4 Dead 1. And also, while we're talking about campaigns, every single Left 4 Dead 2 finale for each campaign is so hard. Pretty much at least as hard as the Sacrifice, maybe if not harder. Probably a couple of them are definitely harder. And also throughout some of those levels in Left 4 Dead 2, there's actual objective-based gameplay, whereas in Left 4 Dead 1, it really was just going from one safe house to the other. Back to the survival mode, which in and of itself gave this game a ton of replayability. This is a super challenging mode that even with 4 players, you pretty much have to be near perfect if you want to get the highest ranking.
Guys, somebody's gotta come get this.
Oh my gosh!
Please tell me you have that on.
I do. And with tons of maps to choose from, if you're a completionist, this will give you plenty of content to go through. This game just aged so well, and per Valve Classic, it's got tons of mod support, and it is very much so a very popular game today, and it's getting the S ranking for the video. Alien Swarm is a top-down co-op shooter that was released in 2010. It released as a free game and in turn is a 50-minute campaign that is completely designed for multiplayer co-op. And as a free-to-play game, I guess it's fine. There's classes and abilities that dictate what each player can do and is responsible for, and kind of gave me Helldivers vibes in that regard. But this is definitely one of the most forgotten Valve games out there, and I can totally see why. Part of that is because it's sandwiched between 2 major iconic games in the Valve catalog, Left 4 Dead 2 and then the next entry on this list. It's not necessarily a bad game, but I mean, it's a game that you can finish in 45 minutes and has not really any depth to the gameplay whatsoever. But again, it is also a free-to-play game. I'm just going to give it a C tier. If you were left wanting more after Portal 1, Portal 2 totally has you covered. Funny enough, up until I made this video, the only way I'd ever played this game was through the co-op. So this is my first ever experience playing the single player for this game. Taking place an unknown amount of time between the first game, you're introduced to Wheatley, who's your guide for this game. Things go south as you accidentally power up GLaDOS, who you thought you destroyed in the first one, who then puts you through more tests. With the knowledge of the first game, you're aware of some of, but not all the secrets of Aperture, and as you go further, you gain an exponential amount of more knowledge of the lore behind Aperture and its relation with Black Mesa. Side note, Cave Johnson, who's the CEO of Aperture, being voiced by J.K. Simmons, is one of the all-time best things Valve has ever done. And this game is pretty quirky. Wheatley's always saying some lighthearted stuff, and then Cave Johnson saying just some off-color shit. And him being voiced by J.K. Simmons just makes it that much better to me.
Pump experimental genes and RNA molecules and so forth into your tumors. Now, maybe you don't have any tumors. Well, don't worry. If you sat on a folding chair in the lobby and weren't wearing lead underpants, we took care of that too.
The gameplay gets a ton of upgrades, like the introduction of the gels. These really put your mind to work as you experiment around with what was possible with these. We already established that Portal 1 was way too short, and Portal 2 fixed that problem with making the game roughly 3 times as long, and that's also if you're not even including the co-op campaign, which is roughly about the same amount of time too. This is one of the best co-op experiences out there. It's one of those things that just works so well for a co-op game because you're just working together and you have to really communicate with what portal's going where and what timing of things. It is just such a beautiful co-op experience. Portal 3 is desperately needed because it's been over 10 years since Portal 2, and I think the sky is really the limit with this game, like I already said. Portal 2 has already made Portal 1 better, and I think there's just so much creative potential with this game that we have barely even scratched the surface with. In my only 10 out of 10 games in existence video, so many people were shouting Portal 2, and I kind of just dismissed it. And after playing the single player for this game, it really is a 10 out of 10 game. I do think Half-Life 2 is the objective best Valve game out there, but Portal 2 comes pretty damn close. It is getting an S ranking for the video. Counter-Strike Global Offensive was my first experience with Counter-Strike, and I would venture to say that's the same for a lot of people. This game is the second most played game on Steam of all time, so I think I'm pretty fair in assuming that for people. Similar to TF2, Valve decided to make the game accessible to just about everyone with a low-end PC and an internet connection by eventually making the game free to play. Playing a bunch of different versions of Counter-Strike, it's been pretty satisfying seeing the game go through a bunch of different engines. However, CSGO has to be the most tricky one for me to rank for this video. One, because the game technically doesn't really exist anymore. There are ways to play CSGO, but there's no official matchmaking support or any online support whatsoever because CSGO eventually just turned into CS2. And also in true Counter-Strike fashion, this game has seen a lot of ups and downs. Apparently this game had a horrible release in 2011 and I just wasn't a part of that. So once again, this is kind of like asking me to rank Fortnite. I mean, you know, it's like, do I rank it for what it is now or what it was? Or, you know, there's just so much going on here. Thankfully, this is my most played version of Counter-Strike, the one I have the most hours on because it was the most popular. Even though I can't play it today, I can still talk about it in that regard, I suppose. It's a much more monetized experience in comparison to the other versions. Battle passes, loot crates, keys to open said crates, cosmetics, and then potentially one of the most insane unregulated markets for skins of all time. If you don't know by now, there could be like a 5.5 hour documentary about the unregulated market of CSGO skins. Those gambling websites in and of themselves are an accomplishment, not necessarily for a good reason, I guess. But this is basically when Fortnite went from chapter 1 to chapter 2. I don't really have much else to compare it to. As someone who's every bit of a casual fan, I don't have much to say about CSGO other than this is where Counter-Strike really became a cultural phenomenon. Arguably one of the biggest esports on the face of the earth because of its popularity. It's basically the same game it was before, but now there's updated graphics, more guns and equipment, but most importantly, a much more streamlined and organized matchmaking experience. However, in relation to fun had, since CSGO is now offline, CS Source has more to offer and just flat out more fun. CSGO offered little mod support and even at its peak suffered from a horrible cheating problem that was really impossible to escape. And for that, I gotta give it to Counter-Strike Source for being a better game, especially in its current state. That being said, you cannot undermine CSGO for its achievement for video games and just like esports and, I mean, just free to play. It did so much right. And for that, it still gets an A tier. The Chinese market for video games is a very strange place. Everything gets the mobile game treatment with loads of microtransactions, false free-to-play titles, and everything getting an anime makeover. Well, what if I told you Counter-Strike got a version of this, and that would be Counter-Strike NEXON? Apparently, Valve did technically help develop this game. I don't think they had as much to hand as pretty much any other game on this list, but we're including it anyways. This is a free-to-play Counter-Strike with all the elements I talked about earlier, and it has been out for a while, but people still play it by the looks of things. The only game mode I could find was this like infected zombie mode, and every single motherfucker in this lobby had some crazy ass skin. The guns were insane. I was shooting like lasers and had crazy reload animations, and then I had this like voodoo doll that again just gave me this weird vibe. I just wasn't crazy on this. I think I'll just stick to Counter-Strike Source when it comes to modded content and, you know, these custom games. And there's also this one gun that whenever I shot it would give me a fucking aneurysm, so that certainly wasn't helping me enjoying this game. And I'm gonna be pretty harsh here. I'm giving this an F tier. This is the worst Valve game out there. Let me get one thing straight. I fucking hate MOBAs. Don't get that twisted to say I think MOBAs are a bad genre or that they're like Dota 2 is a bad game, but they are just simply not made for me. Basically, any game with simulated combat, I just can never wrap my head around. If anytime we talk about an RTS game on this list, I have to chump out and be a little bitch when I review it. I'm well aware this game is immensely popular. People love it, but whenever I play these games, I just get yelled at. I'm terrible. The community is kind of fucking toxic in that regard. I have no idea what's going on, and I just don't have fun. The game's 45 minutes. The list goes on and on for me to just not enjoy these games. I tried Smite. I tried League. I tried this. I played the fucking Pokemon one for crying out loud, and they might as well all be the same game to me, even though I know they're not. I'm just going to give this a B tier. You know, the Dota loyalists, go ahead and rip me apart, but that's where I stand on this game. Like most VR games, the lab simply just showcases what VR can do and little mini games and kind of just acts as a tech demo. It was released in the spring of 2016 where VR was definitely in its infancy stage and sort of a hot commodity. And the lab does a great job of giving new VR players a hefty taste of how to use their new equipment. It's a collection of mini games that let you use whatever headset of your choice in a handful of different ways. Also, it's free to play, and this is a free game that I think any VR player should try out first thing when they get their headset. Specifically, the Defend the Door with the bow and arrow segment was actually a lot of fun, and I'm really surprised I never played this game sooner since I've had my Rift S for like 6 years now. And also, I'm really sorry for the limited footage on this one. Capturing footage on the VR headset, I was still trying to figure out when I was playing this one because this is the first VR game I played while capturing. So the footage is going to be a little bit jank, but I really did enjoy this game actually. B tier. Online card games are a little redundant at this point because basically if you're not Magic or Hearthstone, there's no real way to compete with what's hot, and Artifact is living proof of that. Fun fact, the first time I ever heard about this game was that when in like 2018, I think, people were just streaming movies that were in theater like Avengers Endgame. They would get away with it because they would just say they were playing Artifact, and since Twitch didn't give a fuck about that community whatsoever, they wouldn't even look into it. If you're catching on the right day, just hop on Artifact stream and watch Avengers Endgame in its entirety when it was very much so still in theater, so that's pretty funny. Anyways, there are now two different versions of the game, Artifact Classic and Artifact Foundry. Foundry was the later version that's supposed to be a more streamlined experience, but I didn't find much difference between the two. It's a TCG game with a 3-lane tower defense strategy gimmick to it, and I don't think it takes much thinking, and I didn't really have any fun playing it whatsoever. It's very slow in comparison to something like Magic, and also it tells you like how much damage everything's gonna do before you like simulate the combat, which takes out a ton of strategy for a trading card game. It seems to me they're just like holding your hand for no apparent reason. Apparently this game had a huge pay to win problem at launch, and apparently that's fixed, so I guess that's nice, but I will never play this game again, and I'm giving it a D tier. Dota Underlords is a mobile spin-off of Dota that is also on desktop, and it won't come to a surprise that this game also just was not made for me. Considering this game is by definition an auto battler, and since I already talked about how I don't really care or like can comprehend, I guess, simulated combat, yeah, it just did not hit for me. And to make matters worse, I couldn't even find a game in 2025 unless I queued in with bots, so that also kind of nullifies me ranking this video or like giving it a proper ranking, I guess. So I'm gonna play it safe. It gets a C tier. We've already established that Valve is pretty damn good at making a VR tech demo, but imagine if they made a full-fledged AAA title in VR. That is what Half-Life ALYX is. Since the Half-Life story hadn't gotten any type of content since the Half-Life 2 Episode 2 cliffhanger, people were excited that the word of a new Half-Life game had gotten out, but people were quick to become divisive when it was revealed to be a VR game. The best way to describe this feeling is that back in 2008 when a Banjo-Kazooie game was leaked, people were pretty hyped, and then it turned out to be a fucking race car builder game. But unlike Nuts and Bolts, Half-Life ALYX is a full-fledged AAA title in VR, which to this day, I still don't think any other game like that exists. Taking place between Half-Life 1 and 2, you play as Alex as he searches for her captured father. The best VR game I had played so far was probably Boneworks, and I thoroughly enjoyed that game, partially because it actually unrelated but did have a Half-Life vibe to it. I fully understand that VR is definitely not for everyone, whether it be like motion sickness. I know there are people who literally just cannot stand it like physically, or two, you just rather sit on your ass and play a game. Two are very valid points. I'm not even trying to make fun of those kind of people, but this game sparks your curiosity kind of in the same way Portal does, in that it's just like solving these puzzles in creative ways, like with actually doing shit, is so satisfying. Half-Life was already good at this, and playing it hands-on quite literally worked so well. Although we don't get the closure for the ending of Half-Life 2, this story is still great and every bit of a Half-Life title. City 17 in the Half-Life universe has never been this immersive, and you're never taken out of the experience because the controls are perfect. With every VR game, there's at least a little jank, especially when it comes to doing shit with physics, and with ALYX doing crazy stuff, especially with the gravity gloves, feels accurate to what you're actually trying to do. I can't find much to complain about this game. I thought it was going to be a really short experience, but this game is actually, honestly, I think it's actually longer than Half-Life 1 and 2, which is pretty impressive. That's kind of what makes this a AAA game. The graphics look really good. It is actually a full $60 title, and I had no problem forking over that money. I'm not like a VR enthusiast, but I hope there's more VR games that follow suit. Half-Life ALYX gets an A tier. Aperture Desk Job is another tech demo to showcase the Source 2 engine. All you really do in this game is inspect toilets and then turn it to a machine gun and then go to Cave Johnson's office and blow up his head. I mean, that's you go to jail too, I guess, but that's literally the whole entire game. Again, it's technically the first game on the Source 2 engine, so that's cool, but I would not play this game again. But it's also hard to rank because it's free to play and it's also 20 minutes, so my hands are kind of tied here. There is no reason to replay this. I'm just going to give it a C tier. For like the 6th time now, I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm the kind of guy who needs to talk about CSGO and CS2 and the differences and which one's better or worse. I still remember they announced CS2, or better yet, when CSGO also got like updated into CS2. Remember they were showing like the new graphics and like mechanics, and I guess like the smokes were like a big deal. Bro, it is the same fucking game. It was a new code of pay. I'm done doing this shit. That being said, I'm giving it the exact same tier as CSGO. A tier. As of right now, Deadlock is still in very, very, very early alpha stages. There's only one map in the game, and it's definitely not finished. You can technically still play it, and I've played a couple matches of it, but it is very far from being finished, so I'm definitely not going to rank it on this video. I do think I'm much more likely to enjoy a game like this than Dota, so I'm looking forward to when the game finally gets released, because right now if you play it, you're just going to play the same map over and over again. There's a very limited hero selection as well. So it's going to be unranked, but I am genuinely excited to see what they do with that game. But that is every single Valve game ranked. Here is my final ranking. Go ahead and tell me what you disagree with and what you agree with. I would love to know. Shout out Gabe Newell for giving us probably the best catalog of games from one developer of all time. If you want to see me rank every Halo game or every Far Cry game, click on screen now, and if you liked, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike, and thank you so much for watching.